what could happen is that students and learners would see the benefit of, actually, I can get a degree without building debt and getting some experience, and therefore could it almost just create kind of another bias that actually says, do you know what, mum and dad work for a big company, they know there's an apprenticeship scheme, they know it's great because you're going to get a degree and you're not, etc., etc. And therefore you're just taking the problems and recreating them in a different way.
So, welcome to episode 3 of the Tricky to Title podcast. I'm very lucky to be joined today by John Massey. Hi, John.
Hi, Richard. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you very much. So, after 25 years working as a director in financial services, John has since moved into a role in coaching, teaching and mentoring Chartered Management Degree Apprentices. So thank you very much for joining us, John. We're going to talk about apprentices and apprenticeships today. It's going to be our topic of discussion. But before we get into that, a couple of important notes to mention. John has admitted he has watched a previous one, so he has some vague understanding of the activity. But for those of you that haven't yet seen, and this doesn't really work for people listening, apologies, but we do have a mug each, and we do have some colouring pens. And the task today is for me to draw or design a mug for John to take home. Lucky John. And as you've seen in previous episodes, I'm trying to improve my Dave the Donkey each time. And I'll talk about Dave in a minute. And John is going to design a mug for me to take home, which will stay on my Tricky to Title mug shelf, which is growing daily, so it's very exciting. We have Dave with us, who is our podcast mascot. Dave comes everywhere with me. He was a present from my wife, he's been with me for some time, and so for some reason decided that he would be our mascot. And then the principles around the podcast, if you've listened before, you'll know, but essentially this is no selling. This is just interesting people talking about interesting things that has some sort of vague relevance, hopefully, to learning, development and talent. Sometimes we'll go a little bit off topic and we might talk about Star Trek or Tinder in the first episode. But we'll see how we go today. Talk about off topic, we were just talking before we joined. John said there's an interesting fact about cameras which requires him to breathe in for the next 40 minutes. So I'm very excited to know that.
So it's a known fact that when you're being recorded to be shown to an audience, cameras or the camera lens adds £6 onto your weight. You've obviously put 6 cameras up
absolutely
for me today, so you know.
In reality, John runs around in the shower to get wet. In reality, that's what's happened here, and this is all camera trickery. So, John, apprenticeships and apprentices. I guess first question really is why is that your interest? Why is that something you wanted to come talk today about?
Yeah, so probably my last role in financial services involved a lot of work with school leaving apprentices. We transformed effectively a department with young talent, so bringing in school leavers on a level 3 apprenticeship that had specialism in financial services and investment management. Along with all of the great work experience that they apprentices got, they also got a professional qualification. And I think it just was an eye-opener for me on a number of reasons. I have a couple of kids who were around that sort of age. It was great to see other people of that age who aren't my children, and to open your eyes to quite the talent that they have and that they can bring to roles, that youthful enthusiasm rubs off on everybody, right? And kind of, I know I was probably. We took on quite a lot of apprentices, probably over a 3-year period. A third of the department, probably 30 to 40 people were apprentices or had completed their apprenticeships. Kind of always reminded of the very the very famous Alan Hansen quote about never winning anything with kids before Man United went on to sort of dominate with a team of very young players, and that sort of stuck with me. And actually, the talent, the enthusiasm, the work ethic that we saw through those apprentices helped absolutely transform a department, and really just created a really great environment to go to work in. So that was at the sort of the level three side, and then subsequently could sort of moved on. And as you alluded to, I now coach, mentor, teach chartered degree apprentices, who again can be a mix of early careers and people a bit later in their career who perhaps started to decided that actually getting some qualifications or getting some of the theory that sits behind some of their everyday is the thing for them.
See I'd like to explore that a little bit, right? A couple of points that you mentioned there. So you spoke about the level threes, the level fives, and higher, but also the concept around using apprenticeships in financial services. I mean, the fact that you've got a third of the department, through the apprenticeship program, I think is really exciting. There's still, I guess, some stigma or some thought around apprenticeships, right? That they're for plumbers or they're for builders or they're for, it's not a professional, a typical white collar type of thing to do. It's not available for those. And then you also mentioned about the fact that it wasn't just, you don't just teach and coach and mentor early careers, you're also supporting those later on in their career. And again, I think there is a thought still really prevalent, and it's less so perhaps than it was, but still there, that apprenticeships are for young people, right? People that are just school leavers. So can you explore or explain a little bit more about your view on apprenticeships and the space they occupy now?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I think I've had a sort of at the level three side in financial services, lots of conversations with apprentices where they had to persuade mum and dad that this is what they wanted to do, and that actually this was a good thing to do. Yeah. So again, whilst they didn't, in that case, they don't get a degree, they get a professional qualification, they get 2 years work experience, and then typically, or potentially then get offered roles beyond that. But they've got 2 years worth of work experience, they've got professional qualifications, and they've got no debt, and they've earned some, typically earned some good money. So that just that stigma's the wrong word, but that idea that people had to persuade the key influences that actually this was a good choice is still very much there.
Yeah.
And kind of if you fast forward and think about degree apprentices, it's even more interesting, isn't it? Because you have the chance to get 3-4 years work experience and a degree and earn a salary against going to university and walking away with £50,000 worth of debt. A degree, yes, but no salary. Yeah. And there's no right or wrong. It's kind of different situations suit different people. Definitely also suit different interests. If you think about some of the STEM subjects or medicine, well then they are probably really well suited to the more traditional university. But there's lots of things that aren't.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting with medicine, for example. Yeah, it's a longer course, but you get practical experience. Yeah. So if you're doing a medical degree, you spend time on a ward, you spend time doing the do.
Yeah.
But if you go to a traditional university and do management, you spend typically 3 years doing some theory, and then you're dropped, hopefully, if you're lucky enough to get a role, into a role.
Yeah.
You've never practiced anything.
Yeah.
So the idea of the sort of degree level apprentices, transforms that and goes, well, actually, you're getting all of that experience. You're learning about corporate life. You're learning about how some of the theories land. And therefore, you finish in a place that puts you in a great place to start your career. If you're in early careers, degree apprentice, you're in a great place to start your career at perhaps 21, 22, bags of experience, no debt, qualification, and you've got everything plus what you might have if you were in a more traditional uni course.
Yeah. Okay. So why then, or I'm going to make, I was going to make an assumption. I'm not going to do that. Let me rephrase the question. How do you see, so you spoke about parents, how do you see employers' views changing or not changing with regards to kind of uni versus apprenticeship, degree apprenticeship specifically, right? And their roles in organisations now moving forwards?
Yeah, so I think the biggest organisations do some of everything. So they'll have a graduate intake,
Mm-hmm.
they'll have a degree apprentice intake, and they'll probably also take people on that sort of that 18-year-old non-degree apprentice, but kind of perhaps professional type apprentice scheme as well. So that typically some of the biggest companies will have a mix of all of those things.
Yeah.
And certainly the biggest organisations, without boring people, the funding of apprentices comes via an apprenticeship levy. So if you're an organisation that pays an apprenticeship levy, if you don't use it, you lose it. So why wouldn't you explore those opportunities?
Yeah.
And look to see how they can support your organisation, both from an early careers perspective and beyond.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think it's an interesting point. So for clarity, we used to work together some time ago, and I remember when I first started kind of being asked to look at apprenticeship and the apprenticeship levy within the organisation, there was still, I think, from some parts of the organisation, this feeling that it's just a tax you pay, right? We don't need apprenticeships. We don't want apprentices. It's it's not the industry, that would support that, and so we just pay the tax, right? And we did see a significant shift over the years within the organisation. I think as they started to see that actually a lot of the qualifications were incredibly relevant, but also the quality of early careers that you can get through that approach, right? As you've alluded to, but also I think what potentially helped for some of that was relatively senior individuals in the organisation also seeing an opportunity for their own development.
Yeah.
So again, coming back to say some of that management leadership kind of degree approach, certainly being specific for the UK, obviously, one of the things that I certainly saw was actually once you started to explore their own development using apprenticeship qualifications, suddenly the shift from it's just a tax we pay to I can see how we can use some of that really started to occur. But it wasn't that long ago that we started exploring it, and the view was still very much it's just a tax you pay. And I wouldn't have said that was uncommon in the world that we worked in.
No, absolutely, and I think even as I said, we transformed a department with 30 to 40% of people being apprentices, former apprentices, graduate apprentices, whatever you want to call them. And even as we were having success with that, lots of people still looked and go, yeah, no. And it's taken it probably took 3 or 4 years of continued success before other areas of the business looked at us and thought, do you know what? We can solve some of our recruitment problems here because we can bring in some brilliant talent and they will have a loyalty to us. We can grow our own, train them how we want them to be trained. They don't come with bad habits from other organisations, and there's a real benefit to it. But as I say, it took several years of sustained success for other people to sit there and take notice, which in itself is quite interesting.
I guess it's part of that broader talent approach, right? Of build or buy from a talent perspective, and fits in, as we said, with the kind of university graduate programs that companies have, etc. But it is a longer term strategy for a lot of organisations in that talent space. And I think what I've seen is perhaps less structured than the existing graduate programs that companies tend to have in place. I think a lot of organisations have a very structured, well-run, well-organised, centrally resourced graduate program, very clear kind of goals, links to strategy, and go out and find these people early doors. I don't necessarily, at least in the environments I've worked in, I don't necessarily see the same with apprenticeship programs. They tend to be more business-led programs, perhaps, than central HR kind of driven programs, and as a kind of result, somewhat less formal, I suppose, in that way, if that makes sense.
I think for the non-degree apprenticeship schemes, that's definitely the case. Yeah, what I did previously was very much business ran, from the support to the structure to absolutely everything. But I think for a degree apprenticeship, it's still very much taken under the wing of the early careers teams. It does have that structure. It's very much evolving, but what I see is organisations having that kind of rotational nature. So you're going to spend 3-4 years across a range of maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 different departments, so that you get that experience, you get that wider understanding, and you get to be able to bring that all both to your study, but then also take your study to all of those different areas. So there's definitely an increase in the structure of it, and I think that will only continue as the talent that now looks for some of the degree apprenticeships with some of the very biggest companies is outstanding talent. It's talent that would otherwise be looking at Russell Group universities for their degrees. These are in its early careers, these are learners who are in the A's and the B's category, which brings an interesting point around sort of maybe social mobility and stuff. But certainly it's something that is very it's aiming at that, or it's attracting lots of those type of people.
Perfect. Okay, we're going to stop for a mug check, which is where you're going to get embarrassed, John, because you haven't been doing much.
Well, here's the thing, right? If I spent 20 minutes asking you questions and then didn't listen to the answer but got on with my mug, I'd have a brilliant mug. Because I've noticed you ask a question and then you sit there going all kind of Van Gogh on us, and I'm sat there trying to kind of squeeze in, and I'm not artistic in the slightest. So
don't allow you've discovered my plan of making myself look good, John. It's my only hope artistically, and it's failing as it always does, because I have a son.
Okay.
And I have some grass.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Thank you. And I have Dave the donkey in mid-draw. I will say he's not finished. And would it disturb you to know that this so far is the best Dave the donkey I've done?
No.
3 episodes in.
It wouldn't disturb me.
Oh.
No.
Oh, that's how bad you think we're drawing on these. Brilliant. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. Dave has been getting better. But yes, he's still fairly atrocious. How have you been doing, John?
Well, so interestingly, and a few people, hopefully, who listen or watch this would have been there with me, recently did a graffiti workshop.
No way.
Yeah. And it confirmed what at least 3 art teachers told me 25 to 30 years ago, which is that I have zero talent in that particular sphere.
Fantastic.
But that said, the world loves a trier. So I've started, and it's very much a start. So I started with a stick man, but what I try to put on top is a mortarboard on his head to imply
not a kite.
No. It could look as though kites hit him on the head, couldn't it? Yeah, we go with that.
Yeah. Okay, no, mortarboard. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm happy with that as a start.
Okay.
You can, and I'm sure you will judge me later. I'm gonna think about the graduation. Is going to be a nice day, so there's going to be a bit of sunshine. There might be some blue sky, and so forth. And I know. I think there's.
There's a neon yellow. You can have that one.
I think there's a whole host of sun
hiding down the sofa.
So yeah, that's the mug plan.
Excellent. Right. Well, I continue to bug you to do your mug. I'll remind you mid questions. So there was one thing you touched on that I wanted to come back to actually. You mentioned it very briefly, but I do think it's a really important one around choices about university versus apprenticeship. And I think it's rooted in the core of why apprenticeships existed in the first place, which is your point about kind of equality and socio-economic backgrounds and etc. etc. Obviously, not everybody can afford to go to university, even if from a qualification perspective, perhaps that's their ideal route or how they're ideally suited. You lost the lid.
I don't think it had one.
Okay, stick it on.
That's good.
So yeah, whether that's their ideal route, they may not be able to afford to choose to do that. Whereas, as we've spoken about apprenticeships, from a end user perspective, effectively, there is no cost associated to that, and they get paid whilst they have the opportunity to do it. So, how do you see that? And but then you also alluded, I guess, when we talk about management and leadership, right, that they're going to have high level qualifications, so A's and B's. We also recognise that depending on the background that someone's come from, that will affect the qualifications they get from school. Doesn't necessarily mean they're any less intelligent. So how do you see those kind of two, I guess, sides of that merging, and how does that compare, I guess, to someone that's later in career?
Yeah.
Who may still have got lower qualifications, not because they're less intelligent, but because of the background they had and the use of apprenticeships in that space.
Yeah, so really, just as you say, I think the theory behind it makes lots of sense, doesn't it? That actually, if you are from perhaps a lower socioeconomic background, then the idea of being able to study, get a university degree without cost is going to appeal. And absolutely, the fact that it's free to the end user should open that up, and I think there's definitely an element of that happens. I suppose there's the risk that over time, what could happen is that students, learners would see the benefit of, actually, I can get a degree without building debt and getting some experience. And therefore, could it almost just create kind of another bias that actually says, do you know what? Mum and dad work for a big company. They know there's an apprenticeship scheme. They know it's great because you're going to get a degree and you're not, etc., etc. And therefore, you're just taking the problems and recreating them in a different way.
Yeah.
That's a risk, I think. And I think I've spoken to learners who said, and I love this, that they went into their last A level and their last exam, and that morning they'd got an offer for a degree apprenticeship from a business.
Wow.
And they said they floated in there. They felt 10 feet tall because of what they carried on to go and get some great grades. But again, it's that bit that said that was someone who was comparing, do I go to a Russell Group University or do I take a degree apprenticeship?
Yeah.
So does that really address the social inequality?
Yeah. It's really interesting. So there's a piece in here, I guess, that's pushed to employers, right, to really think about their DEI programs and wrap their apprenticeship programs into that thought process, right, rather than use apprenticeship programs as part of their saying, hey, look, we manage the equality issue because we invest in graduates and apprenticeships. It's actually not quite as black and white as that, and the apprenticeship programs are now, as you've suggested, right, causing different challenges that need to be addressed by employers when they start to think about some of that. I'm particularly interested, I guess, from the perspective of existing employers using that and how that affects equality. Because again, when I used to look after apprenticeships, which was some time ago now, and I appreciate they have changed recently, and that'd be good to explore some of that with you. One of the, I guess, expectations or requirements from the government was that the individual would have to have the equivalent of it shows my age because I can't do the numbers, but the C, whatever that now is in a number, the C in a GCSE in maths and English. Now, some people that's absolutely fine. some people were annoyed that they had to go and find their certificates because they've got a degree in whatever, etc. But for some people, they chose not to do an apprenticeship because actually they didn't have that. And whilst they would have been effectively supported to get those qualifications for free, if you don't have one or either, that means you're doing a degree level apprenticeship plus one or two GCSEs in a subject that you probably found hard at school and you probably will continue to find hard now. So that put a lot of people, I think, didn't really feel compatible to me from the socioeconomic bit, right? Because again, coming back to, we know that if you're if you come from a background that is less advantageous, the chances of you getting good qualifications are lower, even if you have the same intellect.
Yeah. So I think so there's been a slight change that if you are over 19, it's no longer compulsory to do an apprenticeship to have those. There's various nuances, etc. in that.
Of course, it's government legislation. Can't be that easy.
But generally, yeah, absolutely. For those doing apprenticeships who are doing them sort of later in their career, there's not that same requirement, as you say, to do that English and maths. Which also, I mean, I think it poses the point you make, which is good around perhaps putting people off. But I think there's also the bit that says time. Yeah, if you're dedicating, if you're doing if you're in an established role and you're dedicating time to do an apprenticeship, to find time to do that and then additional time for the English and maths stuff can be, can be a challenge. Equally, from there's lots of examples out there where learners find the English and maths at that stage to be transformational for their life, when having perhaps struggled at school to at that level, suddenly a little bit later they're able to do it, which they're able to have the opportunity to do it in a really supported way that then can be transformational in terms of their ability to in those areas. The conversations they can then have with their kids. I hear learners talk all the time, some of the more mature learners, about, you know what, yeah, I've got a 14, 15, 16, whatever year old, and I was chatting to them about the work. And so that idea of going kind of full circle, and mum and dad not just saying, have you done your homework, but actually have a look at my homework type conversation. So again, which if you're thinking more broadly, just brings that whole learning journey to dinner tables. I don't know if people still sit and have dinner, but if they did, to dinner tables and to those types of conversations.
And that's really interesting. I think, a perk probably unthought of by a lot of people at the time, I suspect. I am lucky enough that my wife is an accountant, so maths questions go to her. Don't look at me. I can't help you with that. Can you use a calculator? No, but can you use ChatGPT? No. Oh, right. So yeah, I'm luckily served by my wife in that respect. Okay, so talking then, I guess, and again, still focusing on that management leadership stuff and touching on AI and some of the changes. How does a management leadership? We spoke, I guess, way back. You mentioned the kind of theoretical versus practical, the mix of both in an apprenticeship. How does that help fix some of the skills gaps that we know exist in a lot of leaderships? We've spoken. It's well spoken about the kind of the principle of the accidental manager, right? There's people that are very technically competent, get promoted into a role, not necessarily served up any support. Perhaps they're given the theoretical support. This is how you have a one-to-one conversation. This is how you have a development conversation. This is how you have a difficult conversation. There may be a small aspect of practical in that which is within that course. A bit of role play, for example, but it is, in sense of it, quite minute. How does an apprenticeship differ, I guess, from those internal curated, created leadership management programs that are traditionally offered to try and close that skills gap?
Great question, and I guess the simple answer is that they're over a longer period of time. Yeah, so there's that opportunities. I mean, I always used to say to managers of mine that would go on a course and they'd say, I've done this one 10 times. It's like, yeah, great. And the very best leaders and managers always take one or two new things away that got caught up the first time because there was so much, and then the second time. And so it's always about that incremental improvement, isn't it?
Yep.
So I think the apprenticeship style gives the opportunity to do to 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 study on a longer period of time, lots of reflection built into that, and then lots of that reflection related to real world examples, either ones that have happened in the past or thinking about the go forward position and how, yeah, actually, do you know what? I maybe did know how to do it, and I maybe got a bit lazy, and I maybe forgot, and maybe I forgot that when things were going wrong, I blamed the other person as opposed to looking at the missteps I maybe took.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that opportunity to reflect, to think back, allows that kind of grounding again, and then kind of going forward.
I'd be interested to explore, I guess, your role in some of that. So, you talk about kind of the coaching and the training and the mentorship that you offer through apprentices. I think that's quite an interesting difference, right? That, and you say it's over a longer period of time, but that ongoing coaching is very expensive for employers to offer outside of an apprenticeship program, right? Coaching is not cheap, and there are AI models coming. We've spoken to a few organisations around what they're offering, and some really exciting stuff coming out in the market to help with coaching and mentoring and make it more accessible. However, for a lot of people, there's still AI, right? And maybe with early careers, it'll have a difference of opinion. I'm going to be a bit, stereotypical ageist in some of that, right? But I still think there are a population of people that value that human connection, that space they build up with someone over that period of time to talk about those challenges. So how does your role affect that, make that change, I guess?
Yeah. So it's exactly as you say, isn't it? People like personal connections. Leadership, management is all personal connections.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a few things, isn't there? I guess, I'm sure you have, most people have worked for really bad managers, really bad leaders.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
None
of them will listen to this podcast, I guarantee it. I know I'm perfectly safe, but I won't name them.
But yeah, so we've all worked for bad leaders, bad managers. I always used to say to my team of managers that actually, we have a responsibility not just to the people we work for. If we've got a department of 100 people, then we impact 400-500 people's lives, right? Because if you're in a bad place, you're working for a bad manager, you go home, you kick the cat, you're in a bad mood. Yeah.
Hard, I feel sorry for your cat.
I haven't got a cat. No cats were ever harmed.
Have a cat.
No cats have ever been harmed in my career. But yeah, you go home, you kick the cat, you're in a bad mood with the kid. Everybody in the house knows you're not in a great place.
Yeah.
So there's a real responsibility there for leaders, for managers, to have those skills. And those skills, to me, for the foreseeable future, are always going to be personable skills. They're going to be person skills. They're going to be person to person. They're going to be the ability to do that active listening, to empathise, to have a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, people who know me, one of the things I'll always is try and lighten the mood with a little bit of irrelevance, because actually that's quite nice sometimes.
Yeah.
And in the busyness of work and life, to be able to step back and do that in a safe space, and that's the role kind of, when we talk about working with apprentices, that's the space you try and provide. And it's those conversations where I've had lots of conversations where a learner's perhaps frustrated with their manager, and it's that bit that goes, well, okay, so you can feedback, absolutely, but also what can you change? How can you take the initiative? If there are certain elements that don't work for you, okay, yeah, let's talk that through. Let's understand the different approaches you could take. And then it's that feeling of not feeling alone, not feeling that you haven't talked it through with someone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, don't know, probably showing my age, but it's that bit where you suddenly, days gone by, you'd sit in front. If I had a difficult conversation to have, perhaps with a manager, I'd sit in front of the mirror and I'd talk through it.
Yeah.
Get the words out. Have a practice of getting those words out in a safe environment. Yeah. That's the sort of support, the sort of role that you can play when supporting apprentices, and just also that bit around giving them the confidence that that they will be heard, and that you've heard them, and that you understand the difficulties, and sometimes the braveness it takes, especially if you're in an early careers situation. It's very brave to turn around to a manager and say, do you know what, you've not given me my 6 hours this week. That takes a bit of guts.
It's a big conversation to have, right?
So all of those elements of support are things that people get, which I don't think, however good the AI is, I don't think it would do it as well. And then it certainly wouldn't, a couple of days later, send the message and say, did you do it? How did it go?
Yeah.
Do you want a debrief?
Yeah. Okay. And talking about, I guess, and you touched on it, right? Management leadership is about personal connection. It's about conversation and making that rapport with individuals and understanding them. How do you see, or do you not see, I guess, the space in management degree apprenticeships changing over the coming years as AI does become more prevalent in everybody's working life, right? So it may not replace the role of the coach within the space, but it will change the role the individual is doing themselves. Do you see, I guess, the curriculum, if you like, of that space shifting and changing to account for that? Or do you think that the core skills, because they remain very human-centred, won't be necessarily impacted?
No, I think it would be both. I think you're absolutely right. I don't think there won't be, in 5 years' time, there won't be credible apprenticeships that don't have AI elements, and lots are happening now as it emerges and so forth. But if you go forward 5 years, of course it's going to be absolutely everywhere, but it will still be that there will still be that piece of more general management leadership around managing change, taking people on that journey, making sure that things get embedded. What did we learn? What were the lessons learned the first time we introduced something with AI? How are we going to learn from that the next time? How are we going to make sure that it lands well with Daisy, with Billy, and all of the team? And that's still the same. The same theories of change management are going to be applicable, but with focused perhaps more so on the AI world.
Perfect. Okay. And with that lovely ending on AI, should we do a quick mug check?
Yeah,
and then we've got it. So I have finished, and this one I've added for the first time ever a person. So we have my son,
right,
and then we have a stick person. No, I
thought you said your son. The son.
No, the son.
The son. Yeah.
No, a stick person.
A stick person.
Let's say me, because I'm that thin naturally. Obviously, 6 cameras.
He's shorter than Dave.
Dave is ginormous. And then yes, a rather large. Dave appears to be as tall as the son. Yes. Dave the donkey. So John, you're lucky that you get to take this home. You get to drink your tea out of it. Explain it to the kids. Do this. So it's very important that you need to bake it for 30 minutes in an oven. Otherwise, when you wash it, it'll all come off, and you wouldn't want that.
Good Lord, no.
No. Right. Well done. Good acting. Go on then, John. Show us yours.
Well, so I've added in the sun. I couldn't find a blue to do the sky. I think you've stolen all the good colours. I put a bit of orange because it seemed an appropriate colour around the bottom, and then what I've got on the back is a bookcase. Yeah,
right.
You're glad I said that, aren't you?
Yes. Good. I might, when I get home, just write bookcase above it.
I could do that for
That's
you.
fine.
In fact, I could put it on one of the books, couldn't I? How to build a bookcase or something.
Yeah.
One of the books. So that's it. And again, just for anyone watching, if you're after commissions or any other bespoke artwork, do reach out.
Bespoke is definitely the word. Definitely the word. Okay. So thank you very much, John. So a wrap on this episode of the Tricky to Title podcast. A huge thank you to John Massey for sharing their journeys and insights. Thank you all for listening and for watching. Something has sparked your curiosity, given you an idea, made you rethink how you learn. I'd love to hear about it. You can find John and myself on LinkedIn, or you can email me at tricky2title@gmail.com. As I have closed the previous two, I should do the same on this with the cheesy ChatGPT inspired ending, which is, I'm Richard Pedley. Stay curious, stay messy, and don't worry about the title.